Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm of course Sri, one half of the duo known as the CPG Guys. I'm missing John Sterling with that accent, obviously. I'm an expert in the omnichannel commerce space, and of course my friend here, Peter V.S. Bond, is fascinated by retail media, digital marketing. That includes me and him these days. My co-host is that other guy, and he's the SVP of Commercial Strategy and Field Sales at Fetch Rewards, a mobile loyalty platform. He's particularly intrigued by loyalty in the applications of first-party consumption data in the CPG retail industry. Please welcome the man with the golden voice, Mr. Peter V.S. Bond. How are you, sir?
Well, Sri, as this goes to release on broadcast, we're, 10 days out from Grocery Shop? This is a big event. Yeah, you and I haven't seen each other in person in way too long. So for us to get together in Las Vegas, maybe cut some episodes, meet some people, be in our full CPG Guys regalia. I think it's a great opportunity. Looking forward to getting together. What's going on with you?
I can't wait actually to do that, Peter. 10 days is nothing. It'll go by fast as we prep, get ready, etc. And yeah, it's been 2 weeks since I've seen you. I know we're in it together for the kids, but 2 weeks is starting to get painful. But thank you, Peter. Before we get to our guest, let me remind our audience that all of our content may be found by visiting cpgguys.com on a browser. And we do have a brand new website, all sorts of rich content, episodes organized into themes like retail media, loyalty, service providers, etc. And by the way, y'all told us you want to have CPG Guys merch. Hats like the one I'm wearing here for those watching this on a video, as well as t-shirts. So feel free to grab those if you choose to. If you aren't already following us on LinkedIn, there's an easy way to do that. Open the app, go to LinkedIn's website, enter CPG Guys in the search box, and when you get to our page, simply hit follow. That way you'll get to see all of the content we produce while on LinkedIn. Join one of the other 2 groups we manage. You do have to ask to join. They are a membership-based group. There's no charge, of course. All our content is free. One of them is CPG e-commerce. The group discusses all things that take place in the e-commerce world of our great industry. And the other one is dedicated to retail media professionals and aptly called Retail Media Professionals, where we discuss everything from ROAS, ROI, new services, AI, ML-based retail media, and we also have retailers joining. And collectively, they have over 1,000 members. There's, of course, links to all of this in the digital liner notes of this episode of the podcast and every single podcast we put out here. Now, we're also on other social media platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You have us on Reels, Stories, Posts, etc. And many of you said we got to get on TikTok. So guess what, folks? We're actually on TikTok. Check out our series on knowledge drops. You can find our content easily on TikTok by going to, of course, our TikTok handle, CPG Guys, or simply searching for CPG Guys Knowledge Drop, which is a short 90-second or less way, a fun way to learn about our industry and get to know what's happening in the retail world as well with the CPG industry. Remember to check out our sister podcast, FMCG Guys, hosted by our friends Daniel and Efrain. They take the CPG Guys podcast format across the pond. They speak to retail and FMCG luminaries from a European perspective. All you got to do is go to fmcgguys.com. There's more additions to our CPG Guys family, the CPG Scoop, hosted by Jennifer and Risa. They have snackable conversations with industry veterans, a fun, easy way to discover what's new and next in CPG commerce and marketing. Visit cpgscoop.com to learn more. Peter and I are, of course, proud to partner with Next Stop, what used to be known as a network of executive women whose mission it is to advance all women in business and to promote the cause of gender equality and career development. Visit nextstopisnow.org/CPGguys. Yes, we have our very own page to learn more about this great group and how to become a member of Next Stop Is Now. And now on to today's episode. We focus on big data and how it's revolutionizing advertising. The CPG Guys have therefore partnered with Epsilon, a global advertising and marketing technology company positioned at the center of Publicis Group. They connect advertisers with consumers to drive performance while respecting and protecting consumer privacy and client data. I'm sure that's a topic on all of your mind, especially advertisers. Epsilon accelerates clients' ability to harness the power of their first-party data to enhance, activate, and measure campaigns with confidence. And to jump into all of that, here to speak with us about outcome-based digital marketing, delivering healthy ROAS, eliminating spend waste, is Dan Perez, leader and VP of the CPG vertical at Conversant. Like the programs developed by Conversant CPG vertical, Dan is driven, stimulated, and inspired by data. His love affair with CPG marketing began more than 15 years ago. As a leader of the CPG vertical at Conversant, Dan has worked with nearly every major CPG brand and shopper marketing team, providing them with the ability to reach an increasing number of their core consumers through a variety of digital touchpoints and the tools they need to measure, of course, the downstream effectiveness and success of all that they do. Dan, welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Of course, before we get to the questions Peter and I have carefully prepared for our conversations, would you mind providing our audience with a brief overview of what you do, your role, Epsilon, Conversant, how they come together?
Sure, absolutely. So, I lead our media practice at Epsilon now. I've been here going on 17 years, leverage all in the CPG vertical, working with organizations, brands all through the U.S. and North America. Supporting their initiatives for leveraging their data, leveraging Epsilon's data for media practices, insights, attribution, and things of that nature.
Thank you for that. And of course, for our audience, we'll include links to Dan's LinkedIn profile, the company website, and the digital liner notes of this podcast episode. So let's get ready to rumble. And I will kick it off with the first question. And let's go to the larger enterprise that you're part of. Of course, now you're part of Publicis Group. That happened a couple of years ago. Tell us about this exciting endeavor, how your clients benefited from this synergy, especially in a world that really tilted digital for the last 3 years, and how has the addition of Citrus Ad delivered value for all of you?
Yeah, no, that's a big but a good question, right? So I think the transformation has really been, if you think about it, for the group Publicis. The reason why they acquired Epsilon, it's not common for big holding groups to be really technology experts, and they realized they had gaps in some of their technology, data, and infrastructure. And really, the goal for the group is, how do you arm CPG organizations in this new platform world I refer to, right? How do you give them the tools, the data, the solutions, the strategy and approach so that they can work with and be on par with solutions that the walled gardens give them, whether that's an Amazon or Google, things like that. So essentially, with leveraging our core ID, which I'm sure we'll get into in today's conversations, it's really arming their clients and our clients with the ability to own their own first-party data, manage it, learn from it, add to it, and create their own strategies from it. Then I think the second part of your question is, with some of the most recent acquisitions, most specifically Citrus Ad. So historically, the Epsilon media platform had primarily really focused on programmatic solutions. When we say programmatic solutions, it's really been off-site solutions, whether that's leveraging a client's first-party data, retailer's data, or data from companies like Fetch, as an example, or from partners like IRI, NCS, and so on and so forth. Really, the acquisition now from a Citrus perspective is, how do you take what's working really well from an on-site perspective with retailers and merge that with an off-site? Because as you guys both know, right, it's that an on-site partner, retailer A, their reach is really limited to who's going to that site. Whereas, you've got millions of consumers that may not go to their page, their site on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So there's a huge missed opportunity to reach some really valuable consumers, using their frequent shopper cards. So as you guys know, those are typically two silos, right? You have the on-site spend and the off-site spend. So with the acquisition of Citrus, the thought is now we're going to bring those two worlds together. And that's what you just probably saw most recently in some of our press releases with what we call Unify. It's this unique solution where we can now target and measure with retailers that are leveraging the Citrus platform, both their on-site and off-site spend, and understand attribution across both of those investments.
Dan, the CPG guys are very excited to have you join us today. And I speak in the third person because Shri told me I should start doing that more often. But in any event, let's talk about some of your solutions and capabilities, because a couple of them are quite intriguing. Your latest solution is verified purchase optimization, which I believe is powered on the IRI platform. What does this mean in terms of the analytics engine for optimization and involving consumer data in the mix? Will this improve R squared? Can you just give us what's the real value proposition from your client perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter, you're right. Yeah, it is fueled by IRI, but it's not exclusive to IRI. So those partners that can leverage and provide data, it's really a solution that it's based on this fundamental notion of this. As a CPG marketer, we all have holes, right? You launch a campaign, you cross your fingers and hope for the best, and then you're trying to find signals after the first month, 2 weeks. Hey, is this working? Are people receptive to my message, my content? And more importantly, are they buying after seeing the content? So while a variety of partners have data assets available where you can see at a cohort level, hey, group A seems to be outperforming group B, and I'm seeing some signals in there. Great, we're going to spend more money in group A, but it's at the cohort level. We've really taken it to the next level with IRI, is that instead of looking at the cohort level, we're actually looking at the household or individual level. So 14 days after a transaction is made after receiving media, IRI actually sends us that at the household level, where we can actually suppress a consumer that's bought as the campaign's live. So once a campaign's running, you're actually optimizing in real time, because then we start getting daily feeds from IRI. So we're trying to create what I commonly refer to as CPG nirvana, right? Because that's our goal as marketers. Hey, I've reached someone, they bought. I don't want to keep messaging them because they just bought, or I want to pause my messaging, reach more consumers that still qualify for my audience. And then when I think those consumers are ready to buy again, I want to reach them again to encourage them to keep buying my brand, right? So that's the concept there. We're the sole organization that with our identity graph, we're able to do that at pretty large scale. So you're not taking a small percent of the audience. We're usually being able to measure and understand the performance against this around between 70 and 80%. So it's got tremendous scale. And then to your point on the analytics, there's no modeling involved. You either bought or you didn't buy. Right? So is there holes in it? Of course, Walmart's not giving us data. You're not getting Amazon data and so on and so forth. But going into it, the more data sets we can get into, the smarter we can get as marketers, right? It's that we're just going to keep getting smarter and better, understanding where I can drive most efficient retention, where I can drive really smart acquisition, and how do I then tweak my model and my approach to understand, hey, which of these audiences is working better, right? But I'm doing it at such a granular level. Ultimately, as a marketer, what you'll get from this is you'll spend less money, reach more people, and drive greater sales, right? And that's all what we want to do as marketers, to be able to help drive that.
Spend money, reach more people, drive greater sales. Peter, how does that sound to you? Sounds like a plan? That's what we want to hear here on the CPG Guys for Optimization, and that's what we're about providing. It almost sounds like a nice tagline that now, Dan, you can bring back to Epsilon, right? So Epsilon.
No, there you go. It's the CPG Guys website. We're gonna put a hashtag it. There you go, Peter. We'll put it on there. Yeah.
But you also referred to data sets in the mix. Without the data set, one can't really activate the analytics, right? A greater data set in today's day and age, which is largely now really tilted, even in the world of grocery that I deal with, to digital-based influencing and then digital-based buying, purchasing from a consumer perspective, means you're focused on what we call real-time, in the moment ad delivery, because you have access to all these data sets. You can actually do that, which connects it to the lower funnel activation, which comes back to the slogan we just invented together. Decompose for me when Epsilon says we can actually do real-time, in the moment ad delivery that we're confident is going to the right audience. How is it done? Why do you feel that is supreme?
Yeah, and a lot of it really has to do with identity, right? Especially in the digital ecosystem, right? Is that it's this notion of, hey, if I get an audience from a retailer, or I get an audience from a third-party partner, or from IRI, it's, hey, I'll use myself example. I know Dan is my target audience. How do I make sure I'm reaching Dan at significant scale, and then getting that signals that Dan bought. So that's one of the reasons why, back to your original question of why Publicis bought us, the real notion of why Publicis bought us is for our identity graph, right? Our identity graph is traditionally most compared to Amazon because we take Dan 123 Main Street, great. That's the foundational. We know Dan in the offline world. Then we match Dan in the online world and match all of his touch points. You're like, great. How do you do that though, right? How's that actually possible? So across Epsilon's network, we have partners that allow us to work with their first party data and tag their site. So an example will be, hey, we've matched Dan with all these other partners that says, hey, they're all leveraging our platform. Just to be clear, we never ever share anyone else's data. But what all of our partners share is that when we see deterministic events, primarily transactions, happen online, those partners share that with us, and then we're merging those data sets together. So every day in real time, we're seeing Dan log in across all of our partners, making transactions or login events and things like that. So what we do is that while we don't share that event, what those partners share with us is the touch point where we've reached Dan, whether that's his phone, his CTV, his tablet, his desktops, what have you. So in real time, every single day, we're constantly optimizing to a consumer's profile and updating that profile. So that's what makes this so powerful. We've got a real deterministic identity graph at scale of over 200 million IDs that are based on real people. So then when those partners are providing that data set, I'm matching their version of Dan to our version of Dan. Yep, it's the same person. Now let's go ahead and reach that person. And then when the data comes back, we're able to do that attribution at the same levels.
And then the one thing before we go to the next question that comes to mind to me, we're now starting to talk about data universes. These are not data sets anymore because they actually go across a spectrum of shopper behavior. So Peter and I in the last few months have started learning a lot about clean rooms. So are you all actually leveraging those and that's how you do it? Or is this something else?
No, that's a great question. So we've sort of fundamentally have always been a clean room. We've just never really thought of it like a clean room. So now what we've done is we've made our platforms available in the clean room as well, right? There's actually just an announcement that went out yesterday where IRI we've signed an agreement where IRI can put all their transactional data in a clean room environment for partners to be able to leverage it themselves. Doing the same things we just talked about, build audiences, send those audiences for activation, and do their own attribution, right? So back to the point where we're talking about is our goal is to use the data we have, use the data our partners have, use the data the retailers have, bring those worlds together to ultimately arm brands with the ability to be smarter, more strategic, create these strategies. And then back to the point on the optimization approach is keep getting smarter and not repeating the same things that you think may or may not work, because now you'll actually have enough data sets to feel really good about making the decisions you want to make.
So Shri, I'm really intrigued about the identity graph matching. I wonder if Dan can find me on my old BlackBerry, but we'll save that question for another day. Dan, I really want to get into ROI because Shri and I have been having a lot of conversations, particularly in the retail media space, about ROAS. It is a typical ad metric in our industry, but a couple of retailers recently have come on board and said, it's fundamentally outdated. But in your case, that may not necessarily be true because when they talk about it, it's much more upper funnel. Your activation is much more lower funnel at the moment of purchase. So is this how you are really measuring success for your clients? What other metrics are you looking at? What are you delivering that they can say, fundamentally, we are confident that we can move ad budget into their mechanism because it actually delivers return?
Yeah, Peter, that is a fantastic question. So for on lower funnel conversion strategies, we really do look at two sources of truth, right? It's either ROAS or, quite honestly, we really focus more on iROAS, right? Incremental sales, right? Because the way we kind of think about it is we don't want to overly inflate, hey, people that were already going to buy you, right? And reporting the news, right? It's really, hey, from a growth perspective, we really know that that's the big goal for a lot of brands. How do I get more people to buy me, whether I'm getting them to switch from other brands, they're lapsed users, or hey, they're new to the category, and I think they'd be a good fit. So we really look at, from a lower funnel perspective, a couple different key metrics that are not typically thought about in the digital media world. One of them is unique reach, not cookie reach, not device reach, real people reach, right? Because I think we would all agree as marketers, the true number one driver for performance is reaching the right consumer with enough scale and frequency that ultimately will really drive performance. Then you take it to the next level. Great, I've got great reach. Now, am I reaching the right people, and are they exhibiting the behavior we want in terms of, driving retention or acquisition? And especially from an acquisition perspective, it's absolutely incremental sales that we really focus on. But then, Peter, on the same lines, from an upper funnel awareness strategy, we also really look at, instead of ROAS, we really look at household penetration, right? Because the goal is, hey, for my awareness campaigns, I don't want to reach people that I already know are buying me, or work that hard against them because they already know who I am. I really want to focus on people that aren't buying me, competitors, net new, demos or contextual audiences. And how do I understand, from a video perspective, a CTV and OLV, things of that nature? Hey, are these higher priced formats doing enough lifting for me? And are they really driving net new incremental buyers? Because that's the metrics we think are the most important, right? Obviously clicks and video completion rates, I mean, those are all out there across the board. But from whether it's an awareness or lower funnel conversion stuff, we really try to use sales as the guide of, hey, is this ultimately driving the things we want to achieve in these whatever campaigns we're looking to run?
Hey, Shri, when Dan mentioned cookie reach, I reached for my bag of cookies because I was a little hungry. But seriously, Dan, I love that. You said something very important. I want to call it out before I pass it on to Shri because he's laughing too hysterically at me. He's like, I can't believe you said that, Peter. But the ROAS comment, I could see the spark go off in Shri's eye when you mentioned that. Yeah, ROAS is really where it's the Wayne Gretzky moment. It's where the puck is going. That's where you should be focused. It's clearly where Epsilon is taking the industry, and I think that is the most appropriate measure. Shri, off to you.
Yeah, so that was, for Peter and me, one of the missions we've been on, and thank you for actually bringing that up on your own, Dan, and we love that, which is retail media. The payoff on retail media has to be iROAS and not ROAS, because ROAS would be about measuring what you already pay for via trade, as well as ROAS can be manufactured via branded keywords. iROAS truly determines for the dollars invested if there's a trial of a new item, a new customer has bought into the ecosystem, or even an existing customer adding an extra unit. That's what I think is the single biggest media metric. And I don't even want to call it retail media metric. It's a media metric that the industry needs to adopt, including offline media. Like, gone are the days agencies and brands creating all these metrics just to self-satisfy each other and going to con and receiving an award. Yeah, I actually said that publicly here on the CPG guys. iROAS, folks, needs to be your metric. Challenge yourselves, reach, and thank you, Dan, so much for kind of highlighting it. And I'm also excited that Epsilon has recognized that as a must-have metric. And so let me remind our audience that we're speaking with Daniel Perez, VP of Consumer Packaged Goods at Epsilon. And in today's inflation index world, which we've all been seeing for 18 odd months now and probably will continue quite well into the future, how can you actually help brands retain their most loyal customers, given that price promos are going to start to come back? Obviously, differentiated brands which don't have the scale and with a lower price entry points are going to start getting more appealing. So how can you actually help brands avoid unnecessary brand switching?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, I think if you think about it, a year ago, we had the reverse problem where all these brands were completely sold out and everyone was out of stock. Now it's coming back, and all of a sudden, hey, we've got the concerns of a recession, and people's budgets and disposable income is changing, right? So we've already started looking at, probably back in the early year, where we put together sort of recession-proof strategies for brands. That was, Sri, right on your point, which is, hey, if I've got a set of consumers that are loyal and switchers, what's the right messaging strategy? Not to keep buying you based on promo, but giving them the right use cases or other use cases them to keep them engaged. So we've created retention-based strategies that keep the investment levels low and don't go crazy with frequency and reach. But it's like, hey, I'm just going to pulse you to do enough and keep the messaging strategy unique and different just to keep my brand top of mind, right? Because what we found is you don't need to go crazy and overinvest in these consumers to keep them buying, but you do need to do enough to keep your brand top of mind and giving them other use cases to keep them engaged. And what that'll do is that'll help protect your brand from all the other brands that are trying to do exactly the same thing we are, right? It's that we're just proactively doing it. And back to what we talked about it from a performance stuff, is then we just watch it and saying, hey, is this working? Like, are we over investing or are we under spending? Because in some cases, based on the brand's purchase cycle and frequency and stuff like that, a lot of those factors you got to really pay attention to in terms of, hey, do I have the ability to get you to buy me every week, once a month, once a quarter? That really then changes our strategy and how we think it through.
So to the media gods of the Cannes Festival, it was Shri who took umbrage at you, and I still want to go on the Mediterranean cruises, so please blame him. Please do not uninvite me. That being said, Dan, I think you're spot on. There are so many consumers out there that are not necessarily driven by price promotion. They're driven very much by content, and building a longitudinal strategy that is recession proof, that centers around messaging and not necessarily just deep discount, is absolutely the right way for brands that don't want to just devalue their brand by constantly promoting. So I think that's straight up. Let's talk, because we've talked about some of your core capabilities. I want to make sure our audience has a full understanding of all the arrows that are in your quiver. So can you tell us what other capabilities your organization is primarily delivering to your client set? Is it about data? Is it about offsite activations? Like, pull out all your arrows and show us all the fancy trick ones that the green arrow has, because that's what we want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to sum it up with Epsilon is we're really three distinct divisions within the company called Epsilon. So those divisions really are data, technology, and media. So we kind of went through a lot of the media practices and scenarios. So I'll touch base on the technology stuff. So back to where we were talking about earlier, that's where we sort of have built out the clean rooms, both from a clean room solution as well as an audience building solution that's readily available today. But then beyond that, especially as brands are now starting to collect a bunch of their own first party data, CRM programs, first party, the big push on building your own first party audience. So Epsilon's heritage has always been a technology company as well, right? So we build CDPs, email platforms, integrations into other scenarios on the technology side. And the data side is just that. Epsilon has always been a large data provider, both from an online perspective and an online perspective. So, if you think about the big data providers out there, there's three of them. There's Epsilon, Axiom, and Experian. We've always sort of been in that wheelhouse. Our focus on the data side has really been more on transactional data. So while we talk a lot about the data, we get from the retailer media networks and the retailers, Epsilon's been collecting transactional data for 20 plus years. Whether we're getting that from some of our partners with, hash credit debit cards or other partners sharing transactional data that we can then resell. That's really the three buckets that we work with. And if you think about it, and especially tying it back to the group, that's what we're enabling brands to do, is like, how do you take a data-driven approach to drive smarter strategies with your investments in your media, understand how it's worked, and then create the tools and platforms for either to use yourself, to have your agency teams use, or all of the above, right? So for us, it's this again, I'll use the terms we've been using, CPG Nirvana. We're trying to arm all the partners we work with and their agency teams with all these tools to make smarter decisions to grow their business.
And of course, speaking of data sets, which has been at the center of our conversation today for the last 30 odd minutes. Let's talk about the anchor for your data sets. So give us a feel for, we talked about the big three in the data universe. You're clearly one of the big three. So give us a feel for the type of data sets you have. Is it qual? Is it quant? How far does it go from a consumer perspective? And share what types of consumer metrics, therefore, you can actually enable, and then the duration of the data that you typically work with.
Yeah, so I'm going to split those two buckets up into online and offline. And because I think it's an important distinction because, in some partners, it's hard to understand the nuances between them. So from an online perspective, because of Epsilon's heritage as an offline data partner, we essentially have every single US household map. We're all in there, right? Peter, we can probably not find you on your BlackBerry, but you've got other ways, right, that you're in there, that marketers all, and again, guys, as we think about it, all in a very privacy compliant way. But, from a offline perspective, we've got all the demographics, where you live, what else is it by you, some of your disposable income. I kind of touched on it a little bit on some of the transactional data. And a lot of this stuff is proprietary to Epsilon that, an example, if we think about your consumer history in the offline world, yeah, we can probably have all the way back from where was your first house and where have you moved and changed and things like that, that we readily make available for marketers today. From an online perspective, then what we do is we really then collect data from your online behaviors and really make that available as well. So when we say online behaviors, what does that even mean, right? It's, with the core ID and what we're talking about, it's just tying in the notion of what do you do when you're online? What are you watching? What are the sites you're browsing? What are the things you look at and things of that nature? So with that data set, we actually put a time frame on it. Because guess what? If you were looking for gluten-free recipes because you were having guests coming over, that doesn't mean you're gluten-free forever. That just means that's what you're interested in right now. So we usually put a 30-day clock on that to make sure that it's readily important or fresh information on that. But example, if you shared with us or we understand that you're suffering from an ailment like diabetes, guess what? Once you're diabetic, you're always diabetic, right? So that's one of the data sets that tends to age over time quite well because those are things that don't change over time. So those tend to be hey, these are deterministic, these are things we can validate. And then we have our own consumer-facing platform called Shopper's Voice, where that's our qualitative, where we ask a lot of those questions in survey-based data that truly try to understand, hey, I know what you're buying, I know who lives in your household, but I don't know why you do the things you do. We then make that available as well, where brands can work with us to create custom surveys, to build out models and segmentations to tie all this stuff together. Then with all those data sets, we make them portable. You want to work with Epsilon, you want to work with other partners. A lot of our data is available in the LiveRamp data store and other platforms. It's in all the social platforms. So the goal is that, hey, I'm going to create all this work. Then I need to have the portability to be able to use it across all my different partners to drive the targeting, reach, things of that nature that they're looking to do.
So Shri, I loved one thing in particular Dan just mentioned, which is time-relevant signals. To the very point that he made, we had a guest over this weekend. She has celiac disease. She is gluten-free. So I went out and bought 2 boxes of gluten-free crackers for our cheese tray, and I also bought a gluten-free chocolate cake. Now, when she leaves, we're not a gluten-free household, but in a less rigorous methodology, I would have been tagged as being gluten-free, and I might be served up advertising that was completely irrelevant to how I'm living my lifestyle. So that's really encouraging. I want to close this out, Dan, because we've kind of danced around all these wonderful capabilities. So it's probably good to take a little peek under the hood. And I'd ask you this is, how's the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning now kind of in the middle of all of these capabilities, and how are you leveraging the power of this technology to do the analysis and the signal identification and the forecasting? Would love to know, because I'm figuring that's what's kind of going on in the background, but I'd rather you call it out.
Yeah, I mean, we have a funny saying that, we goof around with it as a team, right? Is like, you're not smarter than a computer, right? So to your point, Peter, all these signals coming in, because we're back to the point we're tying it to a person, your profile within our platform updates in real time every single day. So that sole notion enables then the optimization, like we talked about with our VPL solution, is that we don't go into strategies with a static approach. It's going to be, when's the right time to bid on you? So example, just something as simple as that is, hey, during the day, I'm never online. You're never going to find me online. It's impossible because during the day we're all doing our jobs. So in the morning or in the evenings are the best times to bid on Dan because he's most engaged with content. So that goes in Dan's profile. But guess what? On weekends, Dan's profile looks very different, right? So it's that notion of, back to your point of using real-time signals. And what's unique about us is we're using your online signals as well as then your offline signals. Because then when I'm tying in with my offline data, where I'm seeing you spend your disposable income, where I'm seeing you live, you're traveling, things like that, all those things together, so that when we tie it together, it's like, hey, I see Dan on average 178 times per day. That doesn't mean I should bid on him all those times because he might not be receptive to all the content you have running based on what we see in his profile. So all those things work together so that you're constantly optimizing. And then back to the point of now that we're throwing in more transactional data, it just makes the platform even smarter.
So let me remind our audience that you can find us easily by going to a browser, typing cpgguys.com. You can find all our content, and if you think your company has some thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, simply drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com, and maybe you can join us on the podcast. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com on the navigation bar up top. The reason that's important, and we like it when you tell us what do you think of the show via rating. It actually helps us curate the discussions here on the show. Daniel, I can't thank you enough for joining us today on the podcast and really going a little bit deeper than what we normally see to be able to break down the world of data analytics, consumer, and bring it all together from an analytics standpoint. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, gentlemen, it was my pleasure. Thanks for the time.
Peter, the moment I've been waiting for. This is a power-packed episode. Daniel threw a lot of light all the way right up top on what Epsilon does, the obviously the advertising arm, which he's a part of, all the way down to wrapping up this conversation with tech, AI, and ML. Why don't you go ahead and summarize our learnings here today?
Yeah, I think I can say with complete honesty, this is not my father's Oldsmobile. I think about Epsilon, and when you and I were at Pepsi, it was much more our friend Lawrence was doing listservs and all sorts of other things. And boy, have they come a long way. And particularly around identity graph matching, right? The online and offline, really being able to bring together all of these signals to have a holistic view of the consumer, the household, to be able to decide not only what to serve them, but when to serve them, and then be able to measure against that. The acquisition of CitrusAd and its folding into Epsilon was really about driving programmatic offsite efficiencies as well. And that in partnership with IRI, they deliver audience identification and the ability to do targeting at the household level for really good optimization. The fact that the data is, they're bringing in data as recent 14 days. So they make sure that the purchasing behavior of that consumer is very, very, very relevant. So it's not completely outdated. So the targeting can be optimized. And that it's, what they're doing is not modeled, right? It is, they either did buy it or they didn't buy it. And they can do this at scale. I think the real-time lower funnel activation is a pretty powerful capability that not all platforms have. ROAS, I heard very clearly, is the right measurement in this day and age. And another key metric that they deliver is unique reach, right? Not cookie reach, not me reaching for my bag of cookies like I did when Dan mentioned it. And they are really helping brands build loyalty solutions that are fundamentally recession-proof, that involve, to a great extent, messaging and not just pure price promotion activation. And then detailing the fact that Epsilon is really in 3 different areas. They're in data, they're in tech, and they've had 20 years of experience. I had 2 decades of experience in that, right? technology and media, and that signals are highly time relevant. There are some that are incidental. Example I gave of my friend who came over was gluten-free, and others that are longitudinal. If you've got diabetes, that is not something that just disappears. So being able to tease that information out of the data and essentially create signals that a customer at a household level of people are living a diabetic lifestyle based upon the items they purchase and the frequency they're doing it. Very important. And the fact that the signals are updated in real time every day, both on and offline. I am so intrigued to understand how all of my purchases tomorrow night at Citi Field, when I go to watch the Dodgers crush the Mets, boom, are going to feed into my profile on Epsilon. Only time will tell, Sri. Really, to your point, solid episode, really great data. Seems like Epsilon is on the cutting edge of all of these capabilities to deliver really optimized advertising for their clients.
Indeed, Peter, and that's the nature and theme of how we'll close out this episode. Thank you for that great summary. Epsilon is ready to work with you and ready to run the race with you on consumer measurement analytics, and especially, I love the word that Dan used, ROAS. So with that, we will see you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.